you look at what we have to ask the local requirement this year is up as well. So yes, we have more state subsidy, but because of valuations and everything going up on a local level, what we have to ask for our locals is also going up this year as compared to the past 2 years where it's been relatively flat. So that's just kind of high level, stuff where we start from, where we're going. Obviously tonight you'll see some numbers from Lucy. Usually this first read is everything that everyone has asked for goes in the budget. All of the, supercharged buses and extra classrooms and a gym, and no, those things are not in there, but everything within reason that's been asked for is in that budget. We just have to go sort through and make sure that there's no duplications of things, and then we'll have hard conversations about what we can fund and what we should fund for this year. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, if I could just take a moment to go over the ED279 real quick. So every year we get this magical document. It's the one we hold our breaths for every year. They have a big unveiling day, and everyone goes and looks to what their numbers are. Very complicated formula. It's been in place now. How long has this ED279 been in place?
Oh my God, probably 20 years.
It's been a while, and it's it's based on the very service with your student enrollment, but it's also based on your staff, your staffing. So you see the breakdown of staffing: teachers, guidance, librarians, health, ed techs, library, clerical. Not all positions go in this funding formula. Federally funded positions do not go in this, so you will not see special ed teachers in this count. That type of thing. District administration do not go in that count. In this count, only school administration. So there are some positions that are factored in and some that are not. But if you skim ahead to, for example, page 2, it'll give you your basic counts, your weighted counts, your targeted funds. You'll see specific funds for specific programs like your 4-year-old pre-K funds. Then it's broken down by K, 8, 9, 12. You see disadvantaged funds, obviously your special ed funds. You'll see different things when they apply. When we had our schools in St. Francis and Eagle Lake and Wallagrass, we would get under item E, the isolated small school adjustment. We no longer get that, and that's applied based on how many miles away from your largest town center you have a school, and they give you some subsidies for that. You're going to see some on the page 3, your bus allocation. So every year we put a bus in the budget, and every year we get the reimbursement for that bus. So we're essentially funding a bus through this formula every year through that process. If you skip ahead to, I believe is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, page 5, the one before last page. That's your super summary, where you'll see what your total allocation is, and then it's broken down by your required local contribution. And when I say required local, what that means is in order for you to get your state contribution, you are required to raise that amount in local contribution. If you do not raise that amount, let's say the voter said, no, we don't want to raise $2,800,000, your state contribution goes down based on that. So less local means less state funding would come in. This year, the state is funding SAD 27 at 68.76%, and our locals are funding at 31.24%. And you can see the breakdown by member municipality at the bottom of that page there. So you see what share of that is paid out from Fort Kent, New Canada, St. Francis, St. John, and Wallagrass. And the final page is our payment schedule of when that money is going to be sent to us from the State Department. You can go online and see this document historically. I think they have 10 years worth of data that they saved. So you can see FY24 all the way back down to 14. So you can see, how these have changed and how your subsidy has changed. But I did give you that information on the presentation in the graphs where you can see that state subsidy and local requirement trends changing.
We all set for budget discussion?
All set.
Item 7, Superintendent A, MSAD 27 ESSA report card data 2021-22.
So I get to talk some more. This, when I sent it out to you, was not released to the public. Now you can go on the Department of Education website, maine.gov/DOE/dashboard, and you can actually see the Maine school data. You can search by statewide, by district, or by school, and you can see some of the information that we're going to talk about tonight. This data has been consistent for, I believe, the past 2 years with our NOEA testing system. So we have at least 2 years worth of data that you can compare year to year. Unfortunately, you can't go much further back than that because the testing has changed over the years. And there might be some good news in the department that the state might be able to keep NOEA moving forward. They've made some requests for waivers with the federal government, so we're waiting to see if that is going to happen. It would be great to see the same test for a period of time where you can see that information. I did provide you, board members, with snapshots of some of the slides that I'd like to talk about. I do also have it behind me as well. The first one is just the landing page. It talks about the schools in our district, our grade span, total number of students, total teachers, full-time equivalent teachers, FTE, our chronic absenteeism rate, and then our per pupil spending. So you can see our per pupil spending is $17,000. The state average is $17,996, so we're slightly below the statewide average in spending.
Ben, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
Do these numbers include our tuition students?
These numbers are your resident pupils only. Your resident pupils only.
Is that the difference between the total students here and the one here?
Yep. Yep. Those are attending pupils on the ED 279. These are
Okay.
residents. On the second slide, it gives a breakdown of your enrollment, male versus female, and then our racial ethnic student groups. Our additional student groups that do have enough data to report out, economically disadvantaged, homelessness, and then students with disabilities. You can see a grade level spread of your students, whereas our grade 8 is our largest, our former grade 8, currently grade 9 is our largest group. Pre-K was the smallest. Again, this is the 2021-22 data. Your per pupil spending is broken down on the following page based on funding source and personnel and non-personnel spending. Again, personnel spending is going to be the biggest chunk of your spending per pupil based on, it takes a lot of adults to make these schools operate effectively. Teacher workforce is on the next page where you can see teachers by type of position. At that time, we had 2 Title I teachers and 52.4 classroom teachers, 0.6 of a multilingual language teacher. And right now, those numbers are about the same. We've gone down to 1 Title I teacher, and we've instead added 2 ed techs to work with that teacher. But everything else is pretty much the same. Then you can see the spread on degrees, how many percent of your teachers have bachelor's degrees, bachelor's plus 15, bachelor's plus 30, and then master's degree. And that black band is your statewide average. Then on the following page, your professional qualifications. We have about 8%, or had 8% last year, which is about 5.5 teachers that were considered inexperienced teachers. That's teachers with 3 or less years of teaching. We had 0 teachers that were with an emergency or transitional credential, and we had 0 unqualified teachers. So 100% qualified teachers in the district, which is good. Instructional support staff, approximately 39.1 FTEs of ed techs, and you could see the detail of positions. Most of them are ed tech 3s, followed by ed tech 1s, and then a few ed tech 2s. Ed tech 3s have to have a 4-year degree. Ed tech 2s have to have a 2-year degree. And ed tech 1 does not need a degree, but they have to have a high school diploma. Chronic absenteeism is something that that's high all over the nation. I just read an article this morning from Education Weekly that it's been hard to get students to come back post-COVID. We're not immune to that. We have a high chronic absenteeism rate. We did that year anyway. Whereas our truancy numbers are going down. Truancy is based on unexcused absences. Chronic absenteeism is any absence. And I do believe there is a cultural component to that as well in SAD 27. It's not a big deal to dismiss your child from school for a variety of reasons. Be it family vacations, not during a school break, be it hair and nail appointments, be it a break job on your pickup. It is something that I think we need to pay attention to and we need to address. I know that our administrators are treating chronic absenteeism the same way we're treating truancies, whereas we're trying to communicate with families after 3 consecutive days, after 5 total days, after 10 total days. We're trying to bridge those conversations. After 10 days, we're trying to bring parents in for a meeting to discuss the absenteeism. We're trying to put an attendance plan together around the absenteeism. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work. But we're trying. We're trying to address that. That is one area that we definitely need to improve on as a district. Your high school graduation rate, your 4-year graduation rate at 100%, and your 5 and 6 are suppressed, but those are also at 100%. So why is there a 4, 5, and 6? Obviously, traditional students will graduate high school in 4 years, but you do have some students that come back for a 5th year through their IEP, traditionally through their IEP, and now for a 6th year. So it's not uncommon that you might have a student only graduating after their 6th year, so we do have a 4, 5, and 6 year report. I would highlight the fact that if in any given year your 4-year rate was low, let's say it was at 90% or 85, it might be low based on the fact that 2 or 3 kiddos are still coming back for a 5th and 6th year, so you want to trend that 4, 5, and 6 year to see if it climbs to 100% or close to following the graduations. Your academic performance on assessments by student population. I was able to pull the English and mathematics. For some reason, science statewide is still suppressed data, so we can't see the science. But if you look at the English language arts, students required to test 345. We tested 98.3% of all students in that year. And according to what the state is setting for a benchmark, 85.8% of all of our students were at or above expectations based on what the DOE's expectation is, and that's that black band. Broken down by male and female, and also broken down by economically disadvantaged and students with disabilities. Obviously, your students with disabilities is one area that we would like to see that number increase. That's not common to SAD 27. It's a difficult be a 7th grade student who tested as a 5th grade student based on my responses. I might be a 7th grade student who tested as a senior in high school based on my responses.
So when we look at the statistic and it says 85% of the students are performing higher than state expectation, is that by an objective measure across all students, or is that simply an assessment using the WEA scale of their progress?
It's an objective based on what the state has set for their standard, and I don't know what their standard of meets expectations does not is. I will say that I find this to be set a little bit low for an expectation. Typically, on a standardized test, we would not see our school district testing 85% at or above. But then again, I don't know. I will say I have 3 districts to compare, and they're very similar data in the 3 districts. So I don't know what that looks like from a traditionally high-performing school. I don't know.
Thank you.
Ben, is there any talk about getting the DOE to incorporate some of the tuition student data into these scorecards?
I think their data would be found under their, either under the unorganized territory schools or Allagash schools. So if we wanted to find their data, we could. We just have to go search under their sending district. But it's I don't know why it's attending only. I'm sure it has to do with funding and all that type of thing. Everything centers around funding.
Fortunately. Okay. Item B, remote snow day meal service waivers.
You have a priority notice in front of you that we received, I think it was last week. Essentially, if you remember when I presented the remote snow day plan to you, and I told you that the only hiccup in the plan is that if we send meals home, we will not get reimbursed for those meals. Well, the Maine DOE worked very hard with the USDA Food and Nutrition Service and got waivers approved so that moving forward, if we have any remote snow days, we can request this waiver and we will receive our reimbursement for the meals. We cannot get reimbursed the ones that we had prior to this being approved. So the ones that we had in February, the 2, we're not getting reimbursed for those.
Great. Administrator reports.
You should have one from Mr. Doucette, Mr. Anderson, Ms. Seard, and Ms. AnnMarie Guerrette. And some of those folks are in the audience. I think they all are. Or if you have questions for them.
There he is. He's behind the mask.
Yes, sir.
Regarding behavior management, how do you feel this year is compared to last year at this time?
I feel it's, I think it's doing better. I think every year is doing better, actually, a little bit better all the time. But there's different areas that might be more struggle, and there might be some improvements in certain areas.
Right.
Okay. One area that I found that there is improvement is respect.
Nice.
That has improved.
Well,
And as far as the problem areas, there's certain grades that have experienced more detentions and suspensions. If you look at the data there, that you'll notice there's 2 grades that might stand out, and they kind of follow themselves in groups like that sometimes. But overall, respect has been a positive growth. There's been a major decline in substance abuse issues that we've been dealing with in school. So that's also another positive note. I'd say those would be the two main areas that there's been significant improvement.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for our administrators? Thank you. Item 8, Policy Committee.
So we have a slate of B section policies that are ready for second read. I did share them with you last meeting, and then went through and accepted all the changes so that you see a clean copy of what those proposed new policies are. You'll see that the majority of them were last approved in 2000. There are a couple of new ones. Your first two, BEA and BEB, are brand new, but the majority of the others were last approved in March of 2000. So it's been a while since these have been approved. In addition to the B section policies, we also have an IJJ and an IJJE, which deals with our instructional and library of media material selection, and it also provides residents to challenge instructional materials through the appropriate method of filling out a challenge of instructional materials form, which I believe will be helpful moving forward. I don't know if anybody has questions about any of these. Again, the policy committee did meet. We can go over all these. We brought them to you first read, and then here's the second read.
Do any of you need to take a few moments just to refresh your memory as far as how or what was updated on these policies? Because I think we can move right to approval, right?
That's great.
If not, need to see a motion to approve the second read in adult policies. Dave makes the motion.
I'll second.
Sarah is seconding the motion. Do we have any discussion about these policies? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries. Facilities Committee.
So the Facilities Committee, we had a brief meeting, when was that? January 30. I had asked Keith and Sarah to come in to meet with myself, Mr. Doucette, Mr. Coletta, and Mr. Peter Saucier, just take a look at bathrooms in the building and just kind of game plan around what they felt. We shared our ideas, and we wanted to get a sense of what they felt based on our ideas. So I don't know if Keith or Sarah want to summarize, or do you want me to keep blabbing? It's up to you guys.
I mean, we've had a few renovations in the past 10 years, but really nothing to say that it really brought everything up to modern day standards. So there's definitely a considerable amount of work. And we did the walkthrough, and I think we've come up with a plan to prepare for the future. And Sarah, if you got anything to add, I mean, it's just
one of the biggest challenges that we're going to be facing as is every other school in the nation that has less than modern bathroom facilities is the fact that we're going to have an increasing number of students that are going to want to access different bathrooms based on gender expression and gender identity. The easiest solution for this kind of challenge that we face is to simply move to a direction where we have gender neutral bathrooms, just like your bathroom in your house, where anybody can go to the bathroom, have a private area with a locked door where they can do their business. So when we looked at the bathrooms down in the gymnasium area, the public bathrooms, we'd like to have engineering firm come in and take a look at a concept where you're converting both those bathrooms to multiple rooms within the room that are gender neutral. Not just stalls, but floor to ceiling walls with a locked door where you know it's for anybody to use at any time. And we think, we're not engineers, but we think we could actually have 3 different bathrooms in each 2 of those bathrooms that are already there. So 3 different independent stalls in what's now the boys' bathroom and 3 independent in what's now the girls' bathroom. When we came down to this wing here and looked at the older bathrooms down in the science wing, we again felt that those larger spaces can accommodate multiple use stalls. So it was the advice of Sarah and Keith for us to reach out to an engineering firm to come in and just do a walkthrough and say, is this possible for a future? Then we can come to you as a board with a year 1, year 2, year 3, year 10 plan to slowly renovate those bathrooms to modern standards. That was primarily our discussion.
Mr. Sirois, the engineering firm has been contacted. They intend to do a site visit this month and propose a design in April for the 2 facilities by the gymnasium.
Thank you. If you go to the tech center has 2 bathrooms in the hallway, and on the plaques on the wall, it has the boy symbol, the girl symbol, so anybody can use any bathroom. That's kind of the concept that we're thinking about, making more bathrooms available, because you've seen it before. There's always a line at the girls' bathroom, and there's 1 person in the boys' bathroom. We can maximize bathroom space by making more bathrooms available for more students, based on just them not being gender specific. And we think we can do that in a way that that keeps things safe for everyone and keeps things fair for everyone, so that we're prepared for things that may come. As you know, it is an individual's civil right to identify a certain way, and when they identify a certain way, we as a school district cannot discriminate under Maine's civil rights laws. So if an individual wants to access a boys' or a girls' room, they can, based on their gender identity. We just feel that this is a way to make this fair across the board, so that every bathroom is for every student and every adult.
I think one of the other topics that came up during that conversation was some of the behavior issues.
Yeah.
Tends to happen in some of the boys' bathrooms, or so, and girls, and so, in that open space where there's a door from the outside this way, I believe the idea was you'd be taking the door off. There'd be water closets. You come out, there's common hand washing areas, and there's no door, and so it's easier to monitor for our school administration to make sure that people aren't in there vandalizing and doing things that they shouldn't be doing, congregating in there.
We also had discussions about the fact that when you don't have an area that you're necessarily proud of, it leads to more disruption and more behavior. And we've got some bathrooms that are kind of not nice-ish, and it's time that we give them some TLC so that students have pride in where they are and take care of the facilities that we have. So that's part of it as well.
This is just for the high school?
For this time, just the high school. This time. That's what we're looking at first.
In the elementary school, the classrooms almost all have a bathroom that both use anyway, right?
It's just A-wing.
A-wing
Oh,
has,
just A-wing?
yeah, A-wing has some, but if you get to B and C wing, they have
Just-
more girl rooms.
I think it was interesting to have the people at the meeting. I was the only female, and to have some of the building administrators into that girls' bathroom in the science wing, I think we discussed it hadn't been touched ever, and there's probably 6 different types of tile on the floor. They need some work. So, and it kind of doesn't make sense to do work to not have them be, suit our needs.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm never using a stall ever when there's a stall next to me and a stall next to me. I mean, that's just out of, and I know we have a lot of students that have that same mindset where they need privacy to go to the bathroom. This will make it more private as well. So.
There are children in our district that refuse to use the restroom.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that might, anyway.
I think it's more of a, I mean, at least when I was in high school, it was more of like a meeting spot. There's not much bathroom productivity going on. So I can't imagine that's changed very much.
Well,
No, they get dismissed to go to the bathroom when they really gotta go.
Yeah.
Just use your cell phone.
Yes, use your cell
Yeah.
phone, vape, all those things.
didn't have those things. Okay, any other questions? Items of old business. Interlocal agreement.
You have a copy of the interlocal agreement that has an amended date of January 25 on the first page. That was the last meeting of the Valley Unified Board. And you can see everything that was acted upon in that meeting has a highlight amendment date of January 25. So you see the initial term was amended per the discussions we've been having with all of you. The amended term, the governing body was amended. We amended the board of directors shall have a chair, vice chair, and treasurer, not a secretary. That was amended. We amended the voting share under item E. So you could see all of the things that were amended. One thing that was not amended is under item F on page 2, that goes on to page 3. It was voted on by the Valley Unified Board, but it wasn't amended because the Valley Unified Board instructed me to get approval from each respective board on their thoughts on this. So if you remember the discussion last time, we had language in here around a supermajority vote that would require 5/6 votes, and it went throughout the whole thing for 5/6 votes, 5/6 votes, 5/6 votes. There was a discussion by the Valley Unified Board that if these items are so important and we always typically go back to our respective boards and get their consensus before going back to Valley Unified and voting, why don't we eliminate the supermajority of vote method and simply say that we're gonna go back to the respective boards, get an affirmative vote from our respective boards that we take to Valley Unified, and if all 3 bring an affirmative vote, then the measure passes. So now the language, you can see in that greenish font, says whenever a major consideration vote of the full membership of the board of directors pursuant to this agreement, it must have an affirmative vote from each member school administrative unit board to support the action, representing a unanimous vote. Major consideration votes were formerly considered supermajority votes in the previous versions of this agreement. See Appendix 2. Appendix 2 is your last page. That last page is. And you can see I've just taken out all the 5/6 language, and I said, and I've written the affirmative vote of each member SAU. The only one that we'll probably see annually with this is the approval of the budget, the Valley Unified budget. Other than that, it deals around major changes to this agreement, which you're going to want to, have your voice in, and that type of thing. So that was the recommendation of the Valley Unified Board. It will become fully amended if you approve it tonight. SAD 33 has approved this language. Madawaska has approved this language. So if you are okay with it, your approval will make the entire ILA fully revised. And because of the language in the amended term, The current ILA, the one that we're working on right now, it stays valid until June 30th of this year. This new one would take effect July 1st of 2023. That's when the extension of the term first begins. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. Somebody want to make a motion?
I don't want to jinx it.
A motion to approve the proposed language under 9F and all corresponding changes to the ILA that are impacted by the approval of 9F language.
Motion made by Shannon, seconded by Ms. Fuller. Any discussion regarding the revised ILA? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, on to strategic planning.
Yeah, we just have, I just need to get a sense of who on this board would like to participate in the leadership team aspect of strategic planning. So what Jennifer has asked us to do is form a leadership team, an administrator from this building, an administrator from the other building, 2 student reps, a community member at large. I've asked Susie Parody and she's agreed as the town manager of Fort Kent. Myself, and at least 1 board member. And as a leadership team, we're going to be tasked with finding people for this process, coming up with lists of people that we want to ask to participate in the strategic planning process. The students will obviously be tasked with finding students, and so on and so forth. The administrators will be tasked with finding education staff, and then the board member and the community member at large will be looking at the greater community to find people throughout the greater community. The first meeting of this leadership team has been tentatively set for March 22 at 1:00 p.m. here at CHS. It'll last a couple of hours. We picked that time so the students would be here to participate. If the 22nd doesn't work, the backup date would be March 27th, same time, 1 to 3 o'clock. From that initial meeting, we don't know if we're going to need 1 or 2 more meetings to find our people, but Jennifer hopes to wrap up the list of who we want and sending out our invitations so that she can begin the listening process in April. So that's kind of our timeline.
So after the initial duties of the leadership team, is there a time where they will have to reconvene?
Yep, so after the listening process is ended, and we've collected all that data, we'll let the AI program do its thing and analyze that data. Then Jennifer will bring us back as a leadership team and decide if that leadership team, the initial one, wants to tackle identifying things that we see as trends, or if we want to branch out and get more help to do so. So it's essentially up in the air what happens after that process. But she'll at least bring us together one more time to show the data and formulate the next steps before it actually becomes a strategic plan.
Sure. So you're leaving for 1 or 2 board members?
1 or 2 board members.
I'm interested.
All right.
The pay's great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Fruit snacks? Will you have snacks?
We'll get snacks.
Okay, then I'm definitely interested.
Would there be anybody else interested?
Any other takers? Sarah's
And-
avoiding
and-
eye contact.
Just-
I am.
Well, just because you're not part of the leadership team doesn't mean you won't maybe become part of the listening process, where you're actually in the stakeholder groups having those conversations. So Shannon might identify one of you for the listening process of this.
I'll throw my name in there.
You said March 22 at 1?
March 22 at 1, and I'm going to shoot Jennifer an email with everybody that's on the team tomorrow, to kind of, so she knows who we all are, and we'll send calendar invites. Thank you, Shannon and Keith.
New business, retirements.
We did receive a retirement notification last Friday. You should have a letter that I put in front of you. Dear Superintendent Sirois, this letter is to inform you I will be retiring at the end of the school year, June 2023. It's been an honor and a privilege to work with all of the staff at SAD 27, Jean Martin. And Jean did tell me that she will be completing her 40th year this year. I don't know if you're all aware, Jean did fall ill over the past few months. COVID and some complications. She had just gone in for a procedure back in, I think it was November, and she hasn't been in since because of all the complications. She's feeling better. I was very pleased when I saw her until she gave me this letter. She will be returning though in a few weeks, and she is looking forward to finishing out her school year. I would need a motion.
So moved to accept her resignation.
Motion made by Sarah, seconded by Shannon.
Before you vote on this, the administrative team, John Coletta and Jill Kelly and I did discuss this position. We're not going to post this position right away. We're going to take a look at caseloads, our special ed caseload numbers, and we're going to see if we can maybe not fill this position. If the numbers that we look at are warranted, that we definitely need it, then we will. But we think we may be able to meet the needs of the programming under direct supervision of other special ed teachers on staff and using the ed tech staff that we have.
Okay.
So that's something we're looking at right now.
All right, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of accepting this resignation? Motion approved. Let's see. Resignations, well.
No resignations.
Transfers.
You do have a letter. I did accept the transfer of Paula Vedito to the head cook position here at CHS. Arlene will be retiring. Arlene's last day is Friday, April 7. So on Monday, April 10, Paula will officially transfer to this position. Paula was doing this when Arlene was out for several months, and she did a great job. So it was Melanie Legassi's recommendation that we approve this transfer. So that's just FYI.
New hires.
New hires. You should have a letter. The first one from Stacey Sear. Stacey is recommending Helen Berry for the Early Learning Center Childhood Assistant. Helen comes to us with many, many years of experience in early childhood, and Stacey's very excited because she has a full staff now, and it's been a while. So we'd hope that you would accept Helen's, the recommendation for Helen Berry.
So moved.
Seconded by Shannon after being motion moved by Sarah. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion approved.
You should have a letter from Jill Kelly. She's recommending Sharon Lewis for the position of Ed Tech one-on-one for Fort Kent Elementary School. Sharon's actually the one who has been filling in for Jean Martin while Jean has been away. Depending on how our conversations go as we move forward, we may be recommending that Sharon actually stay in that programming, but we're not sure yet. As for right now, we do want to approve her for the Ed Tech position that she applied for at Fort Kent Elementary School.
So moved.
Motion made by Sarah, seconded by Abby. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries.
And the third letter you have is for the cook helper position at CHS. This essentially is Paula Vedito's position, with Paula moving up. We now have a recommendation to hire Jamie McBrady in that position. Jamie has been working as a long-term sub in the lesser hour position and would like to move up to the 37.5 hour position effective also on April 10 after Arlene retires.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Sarah, seconded by Abby. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Current openings.
We do have somebody who is, has applied and is being recommended. They were not ready to be recommended this evening because we're still waiting for fingerprinting and CHRC approvals and all that. But I should have a recommendation to bring to you for next meeting. In the meantime, when this all clears, we will let this individual start on a substitute basis so that they're not waiting for employment until next month. Your CHS VRMS Visual Performing Arts, we actually filled this in-house. This past week, we have approved the transfer of Jocelyn Societ into the Visual Performing Arts position, something that she has had a passion to try doing for many, many years. And since Jocelyn is one of our most dedicated teachers, we felt it was best to honor her wishes to transfer. It does open a vacancy for Jocelyn's English Language Arts position, which we posted yesterday, and we already have 3 applications that were submitted. So we're in good shape, we hope, to fill the English Language Arts position before the end of the school year. And then we have the cook helper, the less hour 5.
I was just curious, I know that Ms. Saucier does the early college classes.
Yep.
Is that part of the hire? Will it be required that the person coming in has what they need to be able to continue that?
We did advertise it that way, however, we might have other in-house staff that may want to take that promotion over. So
Oh, okay.
we'll have a discussion with the team and see how we want to proceed. But we did list the position as needing to qualify to teach early college.
So we wouldn't lose it either way, though?
We're not losing.
Nice.
Are the 3 applicants in-house transfers, or are they?
No, those are out.
Okay.
Yeah. And not stealing from another Valley Unified school.
Oh, there.
So your cook helper is the position that Jamie McBriarty has been working in as a long-term sub, and we're opening that up as well.
Okay, Budget Workshop 1, first read of the budget.
Somebody other than me gets to talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So as Ben mentioned, this is a very big summary. It's the high-level summary, not very many details yet because we still have to analyze. One thing I wanted to mention, when we talked about the ED 279 report and how the funding comes through, this report and the funding it's a funding model only. It's not a guide to how much you should spend. It's a guide to how little you should spend. You should spend at least what is recommended in the ED 279, but recognize that typically there's a lot more that needs to be spent. The ED 279 takes into account our staffing, but it takes into account staffing at a certain average cost. It does not take into account the age of our facilities, how many facilities we have. It doesn't take into account the age of our buses, how many miles. It does take into account miles, but it doesn't take into account the timing that it takes to travel the miles and what the staff needs. So there's things that it funds well, and there's a lot of things it does not fund well. This is a minimum funding level. So what I have in front of you is a very top level, and right now, if we were to go today, and we know that we're not ready, we still have some analysis to do. We have to check for duplication. I have to make sure that I've accounted for everybody to make sure that we can fund everybody to have on staff and who we need to have on staff. We have to look at trends of, have I provided enough funding in here to account that our fuel and our heating costs and our diesel, the costs have all really increased tremendously. And the food is one, food and the packaging materials that we need to provide the food now is another high cost that I noted. In here I have my placeholder that I always start with a 10% increase on health insurance. Typically we find out what the true increase is early April. We have 2 bargaining units that will be going for negotiations. I have a placeholder in here to account so that we can have a fair negotiation. I don't go in assuming that they'll get 0. I have to, by law, provide that we have to have room for fair negotiation. So if we looked at that, right now we were looking at about a 7.6% increase on the expenditure side. That was, I actually expected that to be a little bit higher, so I'm going to be digging deeper. The second page is the revenue. So on the expense side, the first sheet is the expense side of the budget. Legally, I have to account to make sure that I have enough revenues to offset what we're planning for a budget. So the second sheet is the revenues and the types of funding that we typically receive or that we can apply towards the budget. So you've got your local taxes, you've got your state funding, you've got your carry forward, tuition from the outside, the other units that send students in, the transportation, special ed payments that they provide, transportation for our tuition students. Those are all funding sources that we consider. The food service that we collect from staff that eat here, and also the state subsidy that we receive for the food services for the students. Reimbursement for, or funding that they provide for the laptops. And so I itemize the anticipated revenue sources, and I've accounted for, and the very last number that I plug in is the additional local that we need to get from our locals. And that, on your sheet, you're seeing that just below the red arrow on the top. So if we were to go to towns, to a referendum today, we'd be looking at a 22% increase in local taxes. The last sheet, I basically look at the total picture and say, what would that look like in terms of increase in mill rate? And we would be looking at about a 2.3% increase in mill rate, an average increase. So this is my very first look. It's a high level look, and now we dig deeper. So this is just to kind of give you an indication of where we would be today if we had to go to look.
With regards to expiring COVID funds for staffing positions, we still have the majority of those funded for an additional school year. Our interventions, our academic coach, those type of things. The one that is expiring is our additional school nurse. And just historically, SAD 27 has had 2 school nurses. When we had the surrounding schools, we did it through a contracted service through Fish River Rural Health. And then right prior to COVID, we went in and hired our own nurses, funded one of them regular budget, one of them with ESSA funds. It's going to be my recommendation that we hold on to 2 nurses on a local cost. I don't know that I would feel comfortable recommending one nurse split their duties between 850 students. I don't think we can. I don't think we can do it. So it's going to be my recommendation that we find the funds for that. What was funded in FEDES last year, and that's included in here, correct, Lucy? In this projection. It's a different world with regards to nursing today than it was 3-4 years ago.
So all those positions, those, what are the aides for the, what are they called?
Interventionist?
The interventionists, that's all included in here?
They're still federally funded.
There's still one more year.
There's 1 more year, yeah. They wouldn't be on this local side. Unless they were there.
Dave, did you have a question?
I was just wondering a theoretical thing, maybe you could help me to understand. As property valuations increase, at the same mill rate, tax receipts should increase, will increase, right?
They should, yes.
I'm just actually trying to figure out projection in mill rate.
In the ED 279, when there is an average increase in valuations, they look at a 3-year average assessment per town. They look at the 3-year average, and then when there's an increase, the local required also increases. So even though we're getting more funding from the state, we have to ask for more funding from the locals in order to get more funding from the state.
So as the valuation increases, tax receipt increases, but state contribution goes down.
Sometimes it does. It depends on whether there's different initiatives that they put through the formula.
A lot of it depends on our enrollment.
It depends on our enrollment. It depends on our staffing, because if we have seasoned staffing, the average salary that we're funded at is a little bit higher. There's a regional average staffing level that they put through the formula. They have increased the rates that they fund for the amounts that they give for the buildings and the supply teachers and the other costs that are not funded specifically by, but it's still not enough to account for the rising costs. So there are.
Sounds very complicated.
That's why they had a 6-page, yeah, and this is a summary, like the calculations that go behind that is significantly more detailed.
And so the change in the mill rate that you're projecting here is kind of a spitball figure, basically.
This is very, yes, this is my first look. I have to build it and they will come, basically. I kind of need a central starting point, because the way that I have to build it, say I have a teacher that's maybe a teaching principal. So I have to account for half of the amount of their salaries in the teaching line, so in cost center 1, and the other half in the principal line, so cost center 7. So I have to look at my staffing. So my staffing right now is about 79% of the budget. And until I have that in place, then I start looking at, okay, utilities. I make sure the lights are on. So I have to build it to this stage before we start digging deep and looking at, does this number make sense?
This is generally a worst case scenario, and I mean, as long as I've been here, this is worst case scenario, and we cut at it until we
That's right.
are somewhat comfortable. Or,
Yeah.
There is a growing voice throughout the state, through the superintendents, that this ED 279 is almost reached to a point where the DOE has to play with it so much every year in order for it to come out fair, that it's almost time for a new funding strategy, because it's peaked out. I don't know what that answer is, but it seems that the same schools are winners every year, and the same schools are not winners every year in this formula. And rural schools are typically not on the good side of the funding.
Correct me if I'm wrong, this formula doesn't take into account our mileage as far as transportation.
It takes into account our route mileage. It does not take into account any and extracurricular mileage.
Okay.
Although it takes into account our mileage that we traveled for our routes, it doesn't take into account that if I was using one bus to pick up all my elementary kids and travel the same miles, it would take 2 hours to get them here. So even though I'm traveling the miles, I have to have 2 buses, two staff, and it doesn't take that into account. Every year we're putting in, we do put in a bus in the budget. When we look at our needs, the age of our buses is not necessarily just on the mileage, because you may travel 40 miles, but it takes an hour and a half. It's the run time as well and the usage on them. So when we look at what our needs would be, we would actually have to buy a bus and a third every year in order to replenish in time. Right now we're buying 1. Our COVID funds have helped, but in order, we have to leave that bus in there, otherwise we'd be falling behind, and I don't think we wanna go to horse and buggy.
No.
Dog sled.
So unless there's further questions, we'll
Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy.
We do keep applying for the electric buses, programs that come up. We just haven't got lucky yet. I think we live too far north for them to approve it.
I don't know if lucky is the right term. Let somebody else be lucky first.
Yeah. Have we heard back about the pre-K expansion grants and?
Peter and I were going to report out to you tonight on some numbers that we think were fairly accurate. However, as Lucy was crunching some numbers as well, there seems to be a disconnect on what the department wants us to put under monies to be funded for the grant. That is typically funded under locals, and Lucy's fear is if we move it for grant money for a one-year grant reward, then it's going to look like an increase to the regular budget the following year. So she's reached out to the department to get a better idea on why those numbers were asked to be put in a certain place, and we'll hopefully have numbers for you. Our preliminary estimate was over $200,000.
Peter was, and even if we move the two areas that are of greatest concern to us back into the local line so that we avoid the problems that Lucy is anticipating, we'll still be looking at well over $100,000 for SAU 27. So there'll be more than enough money for us to fund the grant, and we'll still be able to cover what would have been local expenses through the grant without any implication. So we'd probably be looking at, I think we calculated roughly about 150, whereas right now we're looking at well over 200. Correct, Lucy? From our
Yes,
conversations?
and one of my other concerns is if we move those costs out of it, there's an area that is subsidized. So next year, when we get our ED 279, the funding on that would be lower. So and every meeting that we ever attend with DOE, they always tell us, make sure you look at your subsidized lines, and yet their request was actually asking us to do so. I want clarification before I.
The issue is that we're working with the early childhood team right now, and they're not school funding experts. And they're really trying to incentivize our grant as much as conceivably possible, which is fantastic. But at the same time, we need to be concerned about the implications for 24-25 on our local budgeting process.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you for being thorough.
Yes. Last item on the agenda, thank you to our outgoing board members for taking the time out of your busy lives to, obviously Gary, I don't know if he's on, watching us remotely, but thank you for your contributions over the years. It's not like everybody out there is racing to take this sort of responsibility, and like I said, thank you for being there and being part of this.
Thank you.
I concur. It's not easy, and not a whole lot of people want to do this. So when we get good board members like we have, we definitely are appreciative of it. And we're hopeful that whoever comes in to replace Abby and Gary are just as invested and just as engaged.
Absolutely. Very good. We have a motion to adjourn. Shannon, second. Sarah? Motion. All those in favor?